to start writing again from prison and be so current with what was happening in the world from behind bars was mind-boggling. The reports were smuggled out of the prison and posted to the web by people that were interested in his work. And all the artwork was done by him by hand. It's quite amazing.
Marty's strength is his knowledge of history and his knowledge of financial history. You know, when Marty wrote from prison, a lot of what he wrote was very interesting. So my cycle map is based on Marty's pi cycle. That's it. And I'm sitting there and I say, well, I'm probably one of the few people who realize that February 24th, 2007 is the next pi cycle date. These things only happen once every 8.6 years. So I personally went 100% net short that Friday. This I did in real time from Marty's date. He's in prison. And I woke up on the Monday morning and turned on CNBC, and boom, China down 5% Monday morning, Hong Kong down 5%, Europe down 3.5%, US down 2%. There hadn't been any news. It just was an entropic moment. And those are the types of things that make the hair stand up on the back of my neck, because it was like, oh my God, this worked. You know, it worked in real time.
I didn't think he'd ever get out. I thought he'd die in prison. He looked very close to a broken man, pale. I tried calling him frequent times. It was almost impossible to get him.
Mr. Brown came to his cell one day and said something to the effect that, you know, I'm sorry you're here for this long, that they are just going to hold you here until you give in, break, relent. So I hired some private investigators, and I tracked him down.
Nice to see you again.
Likewise.
How are you?
Good to see you again.
How you been?
I've been fine. Come on in.
Thank you.
I used to operate the law library at MCC, and Armstrong came to me. Under the law, I have to provide legal services to the entire population. And that's where I met and maintained somewhat like a relationship with Armstrong. Armstrong used to be there, make these copies and read them in his cell, come back the next day, highlight it, get some more cases, cross-referenced. It seemed like a tug of war between Armstrong and the government.
Did you have a conversation with Marty about Marty being held longer than needed to break him?
I used to get memos from upstairs. Can we narrow his time down? Does he really need to be in the law library? Only one person can give that order. That's someone from the administration or executive staff. They locked this person up. So it's a domino effect at this particular point, and somebody upstairs will make a phone call and say, hey, break that person until he admitted to the crime that he was accused of. They used to plant undercover agents at MCC to get a confession or to talk to the people that they are targeting. It is manipulation at best, stupidity on somebody, and injustice to the inmate. And then the lieutenants will go down and pick them up and put them in there in special housing. There may be 20 cells, very uncomfortable. Mattress, if I call them a mattress, really thin plastic. You get your meals fed, the officer will come down, let it down just like an Alcatraz, give you your food, put up the tray, and move on. And then you have to cover it up. I had 2 visitors a week ago from the Justice Department. They identified themselves. They wanted to know, was I aware of Martin Armstrong and its case? I would not talk to them. I have no reason to talk to them. That's all. I'm sorry.
It felt like a losing battle. I mean, we definitely for a long time, like, just didn't see how he would ever get out. Like, it's like, this is gonna be forever like this, you know? I mean, he had no sentence. There was no ending point, and we knew he wasn't backing down, and didn't seem like they were either, you know? So, yeah, I would have to say for the majority of the time, we did not feel like he was ever gonna get out. Thought it was never gonna end.
I got called, it was a Wednesday evening. We're gonna take a plea from your client. I said, what are you talking about? Well, you better get up here. Tomorrow we're gonna take a plea for your client who's been in the hole. And I said, well, how did he get in the hole? What was in the hole for? Well, we'll just explain all that tomorrow. So I got up early, took a train to New York, went into a conference room in the U.S. Attorney's office. Marty is sitting there. He looks terrible, looks tired. And they said, here's the deal. You want to go to trial? You're going to go to trial from the hole, and we're going to seek 135 years imprisonment. Or you can plead guilty to a 5-year sentence, and it won't be about you. All you have to do is agree you conspired with what Republic officers did. And you can argue to the sentencing judge, you get credit for the time you served in a civil contempt. They had a script prepared he had to read from. I tried to edit and change it. The government said, nope, that's it. You got to read that script. The judge said, I understand you have a script prepared for me you're going to read from.
Here it is. Read this, and we'll let you argue for the credit for the contempt. And it's either that or a rigged trial where I have absolutely nothing, and threat of 135 years. So it's not much of a choice.
Come on, matey. Come on.
He probably never would have seen the light of day unless he was coerced into some kind of plea. His only shot to ever get out was to plead guilty to something.
What Marty Armstrong pled to, he agreed in exchange for time to agree to a conspiracy to what the Republic officials had done and what the Republic traitors had done. So there was never any, like we said, trial or evidentiary hearing of any kind. So no evidence was ever presented. Was there any evidence brought forward that Marty himself did engaged in fraud? No.
It's not what I understand is law. If you think the way that law is to intimidate, coerce, frighten people, is not what law is about. Is not to secure a conviction by hook or by crook, but actually to present the evidence in a fair, open and candid way and let the jury decide if there's been a crime committed. It's better that one guilty man go innocent than one innocent man be found guilty.
And then he started his criminal sentence in Fort Dix. And the Bureau of Prisons refused to credit him for the time served in civil contempt. This is a case of everybody exceeding their powers.
In the end, when he did sign that plea, you know, we knew how hard it was for him. But in the end, you know, we were all like, okay, now you have an end date. You're gonna get out of here, and that's all that matters.
In MCC in New York, you're in a high-rise building. I was absolutely chalk white, never seeing the sun for 7 years. So then I walked out in the backyard and it was raining. And I was out there, kind of like that scene, I think in Shawshank Redemption. And everybody's like, what the hell are you doing? It's raining. I said, it's the first time I felt rain in 7 years. It was wild. That was good.
I really feel that the world needs his financial mind. They need to see the type of work he does and the answers and potential answers he has for the financial crisis that's going on.
We have this perfect storm that seems to be brewing here. One is the war cycle. And 2014, the cycle starts turning up again. Extreme hostility developing around the world. And every time that cycle has hit, we got World War I, World War II. So I think there's going to be fertile ground for putting a spin on anything when that war cycle begins to turn up in 2014. War tends to erupt largely from an economic perspective. The more governments are in trouble, the more they can't pay their debts, and off it begins to go. Every time you get something that turns down like this, you get separatist movements. That is also the possibility of Europe eventually breaking up. 2016, we begin to see a third party begin to rise. You have the natives against the immigrants that are coming in. It's always the same patterns that come up. After 2015, there's probably going to be the real crisis in confidence on a global scale. We see the assets beginning to rise, going into that peak there in October 2015.7. The debt crisis then becomes much more critical in 2016 going into 2020. And then you're going to start seeing the rates rise, because then the banks are going to have to start to bid because they're going to need money. And as the money begins to flow out of the banks, then you're going to see the rates start to take off. With rates that's so low, just a small uptick in rates, you're creating these interest expenditures that are just going to take off like a rocket ship. So we have to eliminate by law that government cannot borrow money, period. Because once they start borrowing, the end is there. That's it. Why are you borrowing? You really intend to pay it back? And they just look at you like, boy, that's a dumb question. Of course not. It's effectively back to where we were with the 1860s. We're now issuing money that just pays interest. The same as it began. There's no difference. But we're graced with idiots, that's all I can tell you. When Europe is basically getting worse and worse in Japan, then the capital comes here. It then forces the dollar up. If they're going to fear a collapse in Europe, it's going to move in different places. This is how it does. So history, honestly, is really just a roadmap to the future. You really need to be Nostradamus or something. I mean, you just really just look at what they did before, and it's sure enough, they always do the same thing. I have family. I want to see that they have a future. Let's actually organize how we're going to do this, and let's be real about what the economy is. There's three doors: default, inflate, or restructure. We have to restructure, otherwise Western civilization is going to be off the map. This is a ride on a roller coaster. You pay up front, or you pay at the end of the ride. Which one do you want? I'd rather know where I'm going. I paid when I got on the ride. I don't want to pay at the end. What do I have left? I might not have anything. And at that point, you create civil unrest, blood in the streets, people rioting because they counted on this and it's not there.
I didn't hear anything from Marty until I contacted him. I rang him at his sister's place. They sent me the number. He was real keen to talk. We had probably a 3-4 hour talk. We ended up touching on what we're going to do to get it going. Shit, 11 years have gone by. You know, we'd all been subjected to so much. But now I'm minding people's houses and dogs. That's all right. It's working out. I mean, they're friends so far, relatives and friends. But that's what I'm having to do. But it just doesn't stack up for me to plan a revival of all that we were doing.
Sure.
Wanted to say thanks a lot to everybody. We are starting Princeton Economics again. It's been great to see you all here. It's been a long time.
Thank you for coming back.
It is at least my revenge. Right?
Cheers.
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 And I discovered that we are all children of light. It's only by knowing the cycle of evolution. The sun. This happens to me really once in a decade. You just look at this yourself, the first card. Last 13 years, you are holding something. Maybe it's not you, it's someone else. Looks like a friendship, which may be more important for the coming period, for you. And you're not going to be alone at the end. See?
Okay.
I think you agree with me.
Yes, I understand.
Okay? I mean, you had a very interesting life.
The euro does not look very well. Big turning point is with the economic conference model 2015. I mean, look at Switzerland. How do you fix the value of money? Fixed rates, pegs, none of these things don't last. If you're gonna fix the money, you gotta fix wages, you gotta fix prices, and nothing moves. If you're gonna create a peg, what you're doing is you're giving me a guaranteed trade. It's like going to the casino. I'll put $100,000 on 23. I win, I get 35 to 1. I lose, you give me my 100,000 back. That's basically a peg. So you're guaranteeing you're gonna buy that at that price all the time. I can do whatever I want, dump billions on it. If I win, I'm gonna make a fortune. If I lose, I don't lose anything. So we'll see the Swissy peg go. It's just a question of time. They can't stop it. As much as Switzerland would like to prevent the capital inflows, the euro doesn't look too positive that they're going to be able to fend it off. Once capital decides to move against it, it comes all the way back down to the historic lows, and then the euro is going to go down. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. The peg's going to go. And they're not going to be able to do too much about it.